Okay, if you're into cars at all, you've heard the term JDM. It's whispered in garages, it's shouted on track days, and man, it is all over the internet. But it's so much more than just a cool-sounding acronym. It's a whole story.
I mean, you've seen the cars, right? The Supras, the Skylines, the RX-7s. But what's the real story there? What's the thread that ties all of them together? What is JDM really?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. We're going to peel back the layers and get into the history, the culture, and really the pure, raw passion that created this global phenomenon.
All right, so first things first, let's start with the absolute basics. Because before we can talk about the crazy cars and the culture, we've got to be on the same page about what JDM actually means.
And look, it's actually pretty straightforward, but it's also super specific. JDM isn't just any car from Japan. No. It stands for Japanese Domestic Market. That means cars and parts made for sale in Japan. And this is so important because they were built for Japanese roads, Japanese rules, and what Japanese buyers wanted, which wasn't always the same as what got sent overseas.
Okay, so with that defined, let's rewind. Let's go all the way back to the beginning to see how this all kicked off. And you might be surprised. The story doesn't start with these, fire-breathing monsters. It starts with some pretty humble, practical cars, born right out of the ashes of World War II.
So after the war, Japan's industry had to pivot, right? They went from making military stuff to making cars for regular people. For decades, the name of the game was pure practicality. They needed to build cars that were reliable and didn't guzzle gas. But then, right at the end of the 60s, something started to change. You could feel a little spark, a hint of performance starting to catch fire.
And in those early years, it was all about the workhorses. We're talking about cars like the Toyota Corolla and the Nissan Sunny. Now, these weren't glamorous cars by any stretch, but they were the absolute backbone of Japanese driving. They were small, they were affordable, they sipped fuel, perfect for the country's narrow streets. And you know what? In the process of being so dependable, they built Japan's global reputation for quality. That was the foundation.
And then this happened. The 1969 Nissan Skyline GT-R. This was the car that basically screamed to the world that Japanese engineering could be about so much more than just good gas mileage. People call it the Hakosuka, and with its legendary S20 engine, it just completely, utterly dominated Japanese touring car racing. This was the statement. This was proof that JDM cars could be seriously thrilling.
So that first spark, it was about to become an absolute inferno. And that brings us to what everyone thinks of when they hear JDM, the golden era. We're talking roughly 1989 to 2002. This was when the legends were forged. This was when Japan's car makers were just on top of the world.
So you gotta ask, right? What happened? Why then? Well, it was kind of the perfect storm. Japan's economy was absolutely booming, the car companies had tons of money, and just sky-high ambition. They basically told their engineers, go nuts, build the best thing you can possibly build. The leash was off, and the results, well, they were just astonishing. They literally changed the car world forever.
I mean, the cars from this era, they're just household names for car lovers. You have to start with the Toyota Supra. Under the hood, the legendary 2JZ GTE engine. This thing was so ridiculously over-engineered, with a solid iron block, that tuners found out it could handle like 1,000 horsepower without even breaking a sweat. It was, and I'm not exaggerating, bulletproof. Then you had something totally different. The Mazda RX-7. This thing was a whole other kind of beast. It was super lightweight, had this perfect 50-50 weight balance, and it was powered by that completely unique high-revving 13B rotary engine. It was a pure driver's car, a masterpiece of agility and out-of-the-box thinking. And then there was Godzilla, the Nissan Skyline GT-R. Across the R32, R33, and R34 generations, this car was a technological marvel. It had this game-changing all-wheel drive system called AT-ESA. It was so advanced and gave the car so much grip that it was just embarrassing European supercars that cost twice as much. It didn't just show up to the party, it owned the party.
And we can't forget Honda's masterpiece, the NSX. I mean, this was Japan's answer to Ferrari, a mid-engine supercar but built with that legendary Honda reliability. And get this,
It was developed with input from the one and only Ayrton Senna, the Formula One legend. It was a scalpel, a precision instrument for the road.
So here's the crazy part. All these incredible machines, they were mostly built for Japan. But you can't keep genius like that a secret. Their reputation just exploded across the globe, creating this massive culture around them, even though most of us couldn't actually go out and buy one.
So how did that even happen? How did the world fall in love with cars they couldn't have? Well, it started on the streets. You had the birth of drifting on the mountain passes and those insane high-speed runs on the Wangan Expressway in Tokyo. Then, that whole underground scene got broadcast to the rest of us through magazines and, of course, legendary anime like Initial D. And the final piece of the puzzle, video games. Gran Turismo put these forbidden JDM heroes right in our living rooms. An entire generation got to drive their dream cars before they could even get a driver's license.
But you know, all good things must come to an end. By the early 2000s, Japan's bubble economy had burst, and new, stricter emissions laws came into play. It was a 1-2 punch that brought this unbelievable golden era to a close. A lot of these iconic cars were just retired. But believe me, the story was far from over.
Okay, so remember this number, 25. In the United States, there's a law. Once a car turns 25 years old, it can be legally imported and put on the road. This single rule has kicked off a massive revival. All those cars from the golden era are finally becoming legal to own here, and the fans who've been waiting for decades are finally getting their dream cars.
And all that passion, that nostalgia, it didn't go unnoticed by the car companies. You can draw a straight line from an icon like the R34 Skyline GT-R right to the brand new Nissan Z. Yeah, the tech is modern, but that spirit, that focus on making a car that's just fun and engaging to drive, it's a direct descendant. The DNA is right there.
And that spirit is absolutely alive and well today. You can see it in cars like the Toyota GR86. It's a back-to-basics, pure driving machine. Or the absolutely bonkers GR Yaris, a literal rally car for the road. And of course, the new Nissan Z. They might be more refined, they might have more safety features, but they still have that core JDM soul, accessible performance that's just an absolute blast to drive.
So when you boil it all down, JDM became the legend it is because it was never just about getting from point A to point B, it was always about the journey. It was always about how you got there. It's this incredible culture born from a mix of engineering genius, a really strong cultural identity, and just this relentless, uncompromising passion for the simple joy of driving.
And you know what? That spirit, that's timeless. So as we head into a future that looks more and more electric, it leaves us with this really fascinating question. How are Japanese engineers going to keep that pursuit of driving pleasure alive? What's the next chapter of the JDM story even going to look like? Whatever it is, you can bet it's going to be engineered with one thing in mind: passion.